Hey everybody, welcome to the In All Things podcast. It's time to see God in everything. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the In All Things podcast. My name is Mitch Frost, and I'm here with Pastor Steve.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah, it's good. Everything's good.
Everything's good.
Well, this is exciting. We were just talking beforehand about how awkward intros are. So we're going to get that down. We're going to figure out the things that we say before we start. But here we are.
That's right.
This is episode 1. And so our goal today is to get the listeners and viewers kind of on board with where we're going to go. And this is really exciting because we haven't really done a podcast at Sycamore with this platform before.
That's right. We've been talking about this for months, and I've been really excited about it because what I do on Sunday morning, what you do Sunday night with students, and when you preach on Sunday mornings is very, I wouldn't say scripted, it's from our hearts, but we do know exactly pretty much what we're going to say, but we have no idea where this is going to go. This is unscripted. And I think that gives the church and anybody that's listening a little peek into us a little bit more, understanding what we're about and get to know us a little bit better and get to share more of our heart.
Absolutely. And it may be off the rails at times, but we're excited. And so let's talk a little bit about the name, because we're not calling this the Sycamore Creek podcast. You might see our logo on some of the things in the corners, but this is called the In All Things podcast. So where did that come from? Kind of what's our reason behind it?
It was kind of a little bit of a process where you had a bunch of names. We kind of weeded through them, but this one really stood out to us. A verse that I think both of us have really liked in our lives is Romans 8:28. And in that verse, it says that we know that God works all things together for our good, to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. But in all things, God works in all things. It doesn't mean all things are good, but God works in all things for our good. And when we thought about that, or like that phrase, in all things, kind of describes what we want to do with this. Talk about all things. There's nothing off the table. There's nothing that we're afraid to address. So we're looking forward to that. And I think so many times people separate their lives from the Bible and from what God thinks. And so we want to bring God into every area of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's based on Romans 8:28. Like you said, we had a lot of ideas for names and kind of where we were going to go beforehand. Some of them were fine and some of them were awful.
Some of them were awesome, but then somebody else already had them.
Yeah, that's true too. We did research other podcasts with similar names. The one that almost was sold was The Creek.
The Creek.
That was what we were going to call it. But we decided that making it a little bit broader and kind of have that double meaning, like you said, where this is going to give us the platform to talk about all things and kind of ask the question, how do we see God in all things?
Right.
Because the hard truth is that some things are hard to see God in.
Right. I mean, there's stuff that's going on every day in our lives, but also on a national and a world scale that we look at and think, okay, what is God doing there? How is God working in that? So we're going to hit
and also
that.
Personally, that's the other thing too about a podcast like this is it allows us to sometimes say, hey, I'm going through this, or this is something that I've struggled with in the past, and I don't know how I can see God in that. So really, it's very open-ended, and this is very exciting because, like you said, people see us on stage, people see the staff of this church, and maybe say, okay, yeah, they're kind of stage personalities, but we're going to peel back some layers.
Right.
And just to give the audience a little bit of insight, I have a bit of a write-up for each episode of kind of where we're going to go. Sometimes we're going to have different guests on. It's going to look a little bit different, but that's all that we're going to have. We're going to have a little write-up, some prompts, maybe a title for the episode and things like that. But Steve over here is not going to be given much. Okay, some of my guests that I bring on or guests that we have are not going to have much either, because our goal, like we said, is to be very open-ended and just kind of let the conversation go where it goes.
Yes, and this is new ground for me because I've been asking you over the last week, so like, what are we going to talk about in this first one? Can you give me some bullet points? You're like, no, it's going to be fine. Just we'll roll with it.
Yeah,
okay.
If you know anything about Steve, he wants to know the details. He wants to have a plan before he sits down in front of microphones and cameras.
True.
And he kept asking me and pressuring me for that, and I told him no. So I'm very excited.
I am too.
But today, what we're going to do is I have a list of different current events, topics, things going on in our world, and I'm just going to talk about them, maybe explain them for some people who are listening that don't know what they are. And then I just want to ask the question, how can God be seen in that? And some of them, there may not really be an answer because they might be funny or kind of off base. But some of them, I really think it's important for the listeners to really ask that question, because we're seeing these things every day on the news, in our world, on social media, and maybe we need to remind ourselves that God is still working in them, even if it doesn't make sense.
Right. And something that you've said as we've been talking about this is when we talk about things that are current, we know we're recording today and it's probably going to get posted within a week. So some things could be changing between now and when the video goes live.
Yeah, that's not much of a debate. Things change every day.
That's right.
So especially some of the things we're talking about, they may be completely different by the time this episode airs, but we're going to do our best to speak to them today on September 1st, 2021, the way that they stand.
Sounds good.
And then just a few more things about the way that we're going to do this podcast. Some episodes may be 20 minutes. Some episodes may be longer. It just depends on the content, what we're talking about. We may split conversations into 2 episodes if we are a little bit long-winded there.
We can be at times.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it's, yet again, very exciting, very fun, very open-ended. So let's do it. Let's dive in.
Okay.
And as we go forward with this podcast into the future here, if you have questions, topic ideas, things you want to add, feedback, anything like that, you can email us. You can reach out to us. You can message Sycamore Creek's social media pages. We want to make this podcast what you guys want to listen to. And so if you have an idea, man, I've always wondered where the church stands on that. Or I've always wondered how do we feel about that with the Bible? Or what does Jesus say about this? Ask us. And we would love to work that into these different episodes.
Yeah, I love how Mitch has a plan for the first 10 to 15 episodes already. They're already lined up, but we are ready to change that in a heartbeat. If something comes up that is urgent or something that's more current that we need to talk about, would just kind of rearrange the order. So I'm excited about that too.
Yep. Absolutely. So are you ready to get into some of these conversations? Okay. And yet again, Steve has no idea where we're going here. Okay. So we're just going to figure this out. So let's start with a really probably biblical concept, the crate challenge. So if you don't know about this listening, this is something that's kind of taken over social media. Things come and go and kind of challenges that happen. There's the Tide Pod challenge, which was stupid, things like that. But the crate challenge is here. And so I saw a post the other day that said, walk by faith, not by crates. That's good. Which is great. I think that was in Proverbs somewhere. So people are building a giant pyramid of what are they called?
The milk crates.
Milk crates, yeah. Those plastic, really cheap milk crates, flipping them over so that you can step on each one, and they are attempting to walk up one side of this pyramid and then walk down the other side. There's only been a handful of people that have done this, but there has been countless people that have been injured by this. Because the tricky part is you start going up one side that looks like a set of stairs, and you get up really quick, and then you find yourself at the top of this pyramid where things are really unstable. And then you try to go down the other side and you fall and you break your arm or your face or anything like that. So let's talk about this challenge that's kind of taken over and kind of, that's
like the big thing on TikTok right now. That's the number one thing that people are doing. And I don't know why it is that so many things seem to be, if it's not an element of danger or if you can't get hurt, then it's not really that much fun or it's not that challenging. And there's an element to youth ministry like that. Like games have to be challenging. You have to be able to get hurt to be fun, like some of the things you've done with Extreme Week. But I've watched it. I've been tempted to try it. Maybe it's just 3 steps high, but some of them, how high have they gone? Like
I don't know, 6 or 7 maybe. Tall is the middle one. I'm not sure. But they're tall. Like you get pretty high up there. I've been tempted to do it as well. I thought about maybe building one on the stage in the next gen and doing it for a message, but didn't want to get hurt. So, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit of danger involved in these challenges, which gets people excited, gets people watching, which is kind of the point why people do this. But yeah, so how can God be seen in the crate challenge?
And God in the crate challenge, wow. It's funny because I think we don't want to go through challenging times that are hard in our lives that we don't choose, but then we choose to put ourselves in situations like that. And sometimes I think that's what happens in our daily walk with God. Like we don't like it when trials come our way. We never invite it. We never say, man, I really could use a trial right now. But a lot of times when things are going okay, we find our way into a problem. We walk right into something like other people are doing it. It's like following the crowd into something that's fun, but then it can hurt you. It's just like anything in our lives. I mean, when we think about, we talk about sin, of course, the Bible talks about sin and we preach about it. And sometimes people want to see how close they can get to something without getting hurt. And so often that's where we are. Not, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the Great Challenge.
That's what I was going to ask.
No, it's like
that's the Great Challenge is sinful.
No, not at all. Like that's like it may be stupid. Things are sometimes stupid, but they're not sinful. But I think it just is it's kind of a metaphor for that. Like it's a picture of what we do sometimes. It might be a good sermon illustration.
Yeah, it might be.
So when I preach it, you could be the one doing it.
I'll do it in the background.
Sure.
But Paul says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial, right? So maybe that's the verse that needs to be stamped on top of the Great Challenge.
Yeah.
But okay, moving on. So now let's shift gears a little bit into kind of the entertainment world. If you don't know, the new trailer for the Spider-Man movie came out, okay, and in 24 hours broke every record for amount of views on a trailer, and also reaction videos made to a trailer, and so it's crushing records. Comes out in December. It's a big deal. So how do you feel about that?
Would you believe that I've been told multiple times about how awesome the trailer is, and I still haven't watched the trailer?
That's shocking.
I know.
I'm a little bit disappointed.
And I do like Spider-Man. I'm not big on all the action hero movies, but I have liked the recent Spider-Man movies. What's the actor's name?
Tom Holland.
Yeah, I think he's great, and the last few have been really good. So I will watch the movie. But yeah, it's surprising. It seems like there's always like this topping the next record, the last record with a new movie. But usually, as trailers, are they usually watched that well?
I mean, to some degree, especially if it's a Marvel movie, but not like this.
Right.
This is pretty.
Do you think it's because of the first big thing after the pandemic? There hasn't been a lot of new movies.
Maybe. But also, I don't know if you know this, but here's what's happening with the Spider-Man movie. Okay. So there's been multiple actors that have played Spider-Man since 2001, I believe, was when Tobey Maguire kind of started.
Right.
And so he did 3 movies. Then there was a couple-year gap. Then Andrew Garfield came in and did 2 movies as Spider-Man. And then when Marvel was taking off with the MCU, now Tom Holland is Spider-Man.
Right.
So there's been 3 Spider-Mans all playing the same Spider-Man, right? And so this movie, the theory of this movie is that all of them are going to be in it together. If you watch the trailer, this is why people are freaking out. If you watch the trailer, couple minutes in, Doctor Strange messes up a spell, okay? All these things get messed up. And now the theory is that every Spider-Man and every villain who's ever been in a Spider-Man movie is all going to come together. Okay? Crazy. If they do this, it's going to be like unbelievable.
How are they going to? It's hard to think about that.
Tobey Maguire playing alongside Tom Holland. That's going to happen.
Wow. So it's kind of like, I know where you're going with this. God in all things, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, 3 in 1.
Wow,
right?
Was not expecting that.
No, it's like how does that work, right? So, and then I think when people talk about the Trinity, it's like how does that work? How can you bring all those 3 together, and they all have different roles and they do different things, different functions? I know, but the movie, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how that's gonna. That's pretty amazing concept.
I know. So watch the trailer.
Are you
please.
excited?
Yes, I'm very excited
for this.
Spider-Man is
you are
probably
a movie
my
guy.
favorite.
You
I
are
am a movie guy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Also in the entertainment world, Kanye West.
Yes.
You knew I was going to bring this up at some point.
I thought so.
Kanye West just dropped his 10th studio album, and it's called Donda, which is
named after his mom.
His mom,
I did know that.
So the album is 27 songs.
Only 27.
Only 27. It's an hour and 43 minutes long.
Wow.
I believe. And the crazy part about this album is last July, Kanye went on one of his tweeting rants, right, where he tweets a million things in an hour,
right,
and he said this album's dropping tonight. This was July of 2020,
okay,
and everybody's freaking out. Oh my gosh, Donda's gonna drop at midnight, and then it doesn't happen, and it doesn't get talked about for a year and a half because it's Kanye and he can do whatever he wants. So then Kanye shows up back on the scene and says Donda's about to release, and he sells out, I think, 3 nights at stadiums just playing the album. Okay, doesn't perform, doesn't even have a microphone.
Playing the album, like pushing play on a button.
Yes, walking in an sold out stadium, but just on the floor listening to the album. And after he does each of these recordings, goes back to the studio and fixes things that he doesn't like. And then, just to make this more insane, the last Sunday morning, I don't know the date, but everybody's tweeting, Donda's about to drop it in 30 minutes. This is at like 8 a.m. And everybody's like, it's not going to happen. It's been rumored to happen for a year and a half. It's not going to happen. And then it drops. So everybody's freaking out.
Right.
Donda's out, 27 songs, this big deal. There's a bunch of features on it. It's amazing.
Right.
And then Kanye posts later that day that the label dropped the album without his permission. So now there's a whole thing going on behind the scenes where this album wasn't supposed to be out yet, but now it is, and it's the #1 album on iTunes everywhere right now, and yet again has broken streaming records like never before. And Kanye said it wasn't supposed to be.
So
out.
what does he do now?
Exactly.
He can't pull it back.
And not only that, just to make this even more complicated, there was multiple artists who were supposed to feature on this album that didn't realize that Kanye cut them until they listened to the album that was released. And so this is just a mess. But I will say, I've gone through the album a couple times. I am a Kanye fan, especially in the last couple years, and it's very good.
Okay.
So I'm just curious your thoughts on Kanye.
I'm just stuck on 27 songs. Did he have 27 last year? You think he added to it over the?
That's a great question. I think he posted the track list last year right before it dropped, and it was not that long at all.
And we're not talking like a bunch of 45-second songs.
No, they're long.
Because it's an hour and
they're long.
So
songs.
I just can't picture a full stadium of people sitting listening to. How much did they pay? I want to know what the tickets cost.
It's a great question. Not only that, but Kanye sold merch at these events and sold $5 million worth of merch at these events.
So basically, I heard about the black T-shirt.
The black T-shirt.
So this is what I'm wearing today. If I took the church logo off of it, this T-shirt would be sold for $99.
It was $150.
$150.
Yes, because the album cover is just a black square,
but nothing on
it. Yeah, exactly.
So
but
like
it's
a
Kanye.
Hanes T-shirt.
That's the thing is you always have to go back to this place. Yeah. It's Kanye, and Kanye does what he wants.
So when people get to that level, like he is, it doesn't matter what they do. It wouldn't be. Even if the album wasn't that good, it wouldn't have mattered at this point.
It'd still be number one at this point.
Right. There are people like that now in this world that can do that and get away with it and be a disaster and even have stuff going on in their own lives that are just, it's all messy. Maybe that's why he had trouble getting it done the last year.
Know.
But it's mind blowing, really.
It's crazy.
It is. Like, yeah.
And maybe this conversation more develops into, maybe as you know, the Kanye's album before this was called Jesus is King.
Right.
And it was a 10-song album where he brought in the Sunday service choir.
Yes.
And it was very, like, we used some of those songs in pre-service at church and at youth. And it was, it won awards for being the best gospel album of the year. Big deal. And Joe Rogan interviewed Kanye, which is the biggest podcast in the world, sat down with him for 3 hours, which I don't know how you even do that. And Kanye's very biblically sound, like in a lot of the things that he says, and even Joe Rogan trying to get him off course and get him to say certain things, and he's just very focused on his faith. And a lot of people doubted it at first, for sure. I was one of them.
Sure.
But after listening to that album and seeing his response, that was 2019 when he released it, and he hasn't really changed his ways very much. He's still very focused on God being,
so is this new album a gospel album?
So that's the other interesting thing is this album is every other album he's done in the past kind of put together. So there's hints of a lot of different things, but almost every verse and rapping part that Kanye has is very much like Jesus is King. Hasn't changed. The album's not explicit. There's some words that they cut out, but from other features and things like that, but not explicit. And there's a lot of songs like, focused on his faith. So it really seems like he hasn't changed much, which is crazy. It's crazy. But I don't know if you have any impressions on that, any opinions on that. And maybe any opinions on those people who just write him off and say he's doing it for publicity or he's faking it. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I mean, I listened to the previous one, and I like some of the songs. I enjoyed them. Enjoyed hearing them in the mix. And I'm always excited to see someone come to the Lord, proclaim their faith in Christ, especially somebody with a big platform.
Absolutely.
It always makes me a little nervous when somebody who had the life that he's had does that, because then I think all these people are following him. What if he stumbles? What if he falls? We all do, but the bigger the platform, the more impact it makes. So that makes me nervous. And then, since he released that first one, I mean, his life hasn't been a perfect shining example for everyone. He can, and so I wonder sometimes you say things and you do things. I don't think that he's just doing it because he can make more money by doing gospel than doing secular music, however you want to describe it. Explicit lyrics sell. I mean, people buy those and they listen to those. So I don't think being clean in his lyrics is a play to make more money. So I think he's like a lot of people who are searching for more in their life. They realize there's an emptiness without Christ.
And he's had everything.
He has more money than we can even imagine.
I believe a statistic came out that he is the richest African American in history. Can anybody prove that? Like legit. Like it's insane
I've heard something
how much
to
money
that
he has.
effect. Yeah. So I don't feel critical of him. I feel excited, but nervously excited. Like I hope that he continues on that path.
Yeah.
Because it does make me, like if he goes back off the edge the other way, and I get nervous about artists like that doing this album, and then he comes out the next album, if he goes back to explicit, and then you got teenagers like hooked on that, listen to the good stuff, and then they're just like, well, Kanye's good now, so hey.
Yep.
And then he started having explicit lyrics, and so that makes me nervous. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is pray for him, is to continue to like just keep praying that God keeps him on this path, and he gets more and more sold out to Christ, so that God speaks to him in the other areas of his life that maybe need some work.
Yeah.
Because, he can have a great impact. And I've seen it. I mean, I've seen what he's done, and I've seen him go in and do some things in some churches, and
he's played at retreats and conferences.
Yeah, right. So
and it's just it's cool to watch, I think.
Right.
And it's interesting that in 2019 he kind of made this change, and everybody was talking about it. That yes, his life hasn't been perfect, and I don't think he claims that.
No.
But he hasn't really gone off the path too much, which is really awesome. Especially because I know we're talking about Kanye for way longer than I thought we would, but he's been through a lot of things, and he's had some times of being very crazy and being very off the rails and all those things.
Absolutely.
So to see him at this place where, from what we can see, he's healthy and he's content, and he's making music that he loves to make.
My
all
bottom
that's fun to watch.
Exactly. My bottom line was I wouldn't say let's proclaim him as a role model now for everyone.
Right.
Because, let's give that time.
Right.
Anybody that's been where he has been, let's admire what he's doing and encourage him, pray for him, but let's not.
But going back to the idea of a platform, he has a big platform.
Right.
So, just creating music like this, where his goal to some degree is to, proclaim truth, right? It's fun to watch. So let's move on. This one is maybe a little bit more serious. Just kidding. We're going to talk about, real quick, Bishop Sycamore.
Oh man!
Okay, so
a school named after our church.
So
no.
Maybe they should be called BS High School because Bishop Sycamore.
Yes, that's it.
If you haven't heard the story, there is a high school.
It's still developing.
I was reading last night. By next week, when this podcast episode comes out, it'll be different. But basically, there was a high school team. If you're watching this, I'm putting air quotes. High school team that made their way onto ESPN, playing one of the top-ranked high school teams
out of Florida.
Out of Florida, yep. And they got beat 60-0. And if you watch that game or you watch clips from that game throughout it, the commentators are starting to realize that they can't find any of the players' names in any databases. They can't find these players anywhere. They're not really sure who they are, and they're getting smacked, 60-0. And they're starting to worry about these players' health. I think one of them tore an ACL, is what I saw yesterday, and many other injuries. Come to find out, this team is not real. This high school is not real. And
maybe
a lot of those players.
There's some. Our governor was tweeting about this high school last night. So there's something going on here.
And a lot of the players were in their mid-20s.
Right.
Okay, like college dropouts, essentially.
Right.
And the head coach has a warrant out for his arrest.
Yes.
Because he didn't show up to court for a domestic dispute or something like that.
Right.
Anyway, big mess.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, wow. There's a part of me that enjoys a story like this because I think it's kind of hilarious that they could dupe ESPN and the organizers of this game.
They were a lot of planning. A lot of planning went into this.
They had to buy uniforms. They had to create a website. They had to, have all these things going on to get to this point. And they had to spend a lot of money in order for them to do this. So thinking about all that has gone into it. And they had to have some organization to go out on a field and call plays and play a football game.
Sure.
I mean, 60-0 or whatever the score was is bad, but it could be worse.
Yep.
I mean, they were playing one of the best high schools in the country.
Yep.
What was also shocking is that I think that game was on a Sunday. They had just played on Friday. You know anything about football? You play once a week.
Yep.
You can't recover from a Friday and play on a Sunday.
Right.
So there's so much. And now I just read this morning that all the schools that they have on their schedule are canceling their games with them.
Sure.
Which obviously.
Yeah.
But there's some debate on whether it's a real school or not. The guy that's administrator of the school supposedly is also one of the assistant coaches. Of course, the head coach has already now resigned or quit. I don't know.
Or arrested.
I mean, there's so much in it that makes you laugh. I can't wait for the the story to come out as a documentary or whatever, a TV,
a movie. Yeah.
whatever they do with it.
Yep.
I mean, the backstory is going to be awesome to just see. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not for fraud and I'm not for deceit. I'm not for that, but it's a really.
But you are for an entertaining story.
I'm for entertainment,
okay.
and like this is like something. If they made this as a fictional story as a movie, it would be like really cool. But to be like, wow, this actually happened. So maybe they'll make a movie out of it and say it was based on a true story. I don't know, but
maybe.
I don't know where it goes. I don't know where it's gonna.
Nobody does. So how can God be seen in Bishop Sycamore?
Oh man, how can God be seen in that?
If we believe that God works in all things,
I mean, you can only. I mean, when you look at it from a biblical standpoint, you can only hide the deceit for so long. Like if you live a complete lie, if you're doing something, you're going to get caught. They knew they were going to get caught. They had to know. But your sins will find you out. We know that. God's not fooled. Even though people can be fooled, God's not fooled. But I mean, all of that, it makes you really concerned about what the heart is behind all that and what the motivation is and what they thought they were going to get out of that. And there's some people on that, all those young men on that team and the people that got all this going, you got to wonder what's really going on in their lives. This is what they thought would be a good idea, fun idea, maybe, but it's just about over, I think.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So we're going to unpack this situation a little bit more towards the end, but let's talk about the company Airbnb. Have you ever used Airbnb before?
I use VRBO a lot, and I've looked for things on Airbnb, but I don't think I've ever made a reservation there.
Okay, so we have a couple of different places. Our favorite one so far has been in Nashville. We stayed in a little apartment. It was awesome. But Airbnb, obviously, big company.
Right.
And so I don't know if you've heard, but they are offering to host up to 20,000 Afghan refugees globally for free. So they've kind of come forward and just kind of said anybody that's kind of getting out of that situation, they can stay globally in an Airbnb for free. That's pretty amazing. It's a really, really awesome thing that they've kind of come forward and are kind of taking on as a company, obviously with no benefit to them, really.
Right.
And so how can God be seen in that?
Wow. Well, I mean, they're obviously doing really well as a company. I was just watching the news this morning about it, and so many of the Afghan refugees are coming in to different areas in Virginia. They're being brought in by plane. And the story was awesome because what I saw was they were interviewing people that lived in that area in Virginia who were taking these people into their homes and putting them up for a while. Yeah. There's several military forts there. Fort Lee, I believe, is one, and some others where they have them coming in off planes, but they don't have anything. And these are people that helped the U.S., and we were trying to take care of them now. So they're giving them like each 2 sets of clothes, but they were having interviews with people, and they said the coolest thing is the church in that area. The churches are rising up, and people are just opening their homes. But they said it's so amazing how these Afghani people are so kind as well. And they're just as concerned about the people they're staying with. And they were telling stories about how great it is. But anyway, just being the hands and feet of Christ in the situation that is so awful. Yeah. And we can all, look at all the political sides of it and how, things went down, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, what can God do now? Right. Because people are people and leaders make decisions, and we have to live with that. Yeah. But just seeing like in the situation, what are we called to do? Love people. So what are we called to do? Love the people that are right in front of us that we can. And I love seeing that happen. I didn't know about Airbnb. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think it's really cool to see. It's challenging for us because a company like Airbnb, who doesn't necessarily affiliate with anything, with Jesus or Christianity or anything like that, they're still stepping up and really showing what it looks like to love like Jesus, even if they don't realize it. And so it's challenging for us to see, kind of those big things happen like that, and then ask in our own lives, what are we doing to kind of love people the way that Jesus did? So that's going to segue. Let's talk a little bit more about the Afghanistan situation. Okay. Obviously, it's probably going to develop even more by the time this episode comes out. But what are your thoughts? How do you feel? And how can God be seen in that?
There's such a range of thoughts and emotions that we have. I had somebody in the church just messaged me. I got the message this morning. It was late last night, and they were just saying, I'm just so angry right now at the administration, and I'm just dealing with all these emotions, and I don't like it, and I'm trying to process it. How am I supposed to process this as a Christian? Because no matter who you voted for, every administration makes mistakes. Everyone causes issues, and I'm not happy about what happened. The way it went down, it was not shouldn't have gone down that way. No matter what you believe politically, to see the chaos and to see all that happen and to lose 13 U.S. soldiers. I mean, and then not just them, but all the people, the innocent people that were bystanders when those bombs went off. It's just awful to know that happened, and very upset about that. Processing all of that. And then also, at the same time saying, okay, well, what is our response now? And one of the things I just, keep coming back to, and I see people's political posts on social media. And the thing is that we need to remember, I still think all the time, is that God is not an American.
Yeah.
And I think so many times we have that idea that, God loves us more than he loves those people there. God loves all people the same. Yep. He loves everyone. Jesus died for Afghani people. He died for American. He died for Taliban people. He died for Al-Qaeda people. I mean, and that's hard sometimes. And I'm not saying that I have, have anything to say good about what they do. And they're terrorists are terrorists, and we should have the military plans that we have in order to defend our country. So, but I'm saying now what we have to do is think, okay, what is our Christian response to this? And I think that segues back to what we were talking about earlier. Help the people that we can help, do what we can, love the people that we can, and pray for the Christians that are there. Because I was reading too about the Afghani church, like the underground church, the Christians that are scared for their lives now, that believe in Jesus. So whatever we can do, is there's any way that, I don't know how we can help them, but to pray that God keeps them safe. Yeah, that's tough. It's
and this episode is interesting because these topics could be episodes on their own. But what we're doing today is we're just going to keep working through a few other things, just so we can kind of establish this place.
That one, I just feel like by the time this drops, it's going to be who knows what, because the chaos, you just hear about things and are them flying the helicopters that we left behind and dropping people off and hanging people. And then you got to make sure every story you hear is actually legit, because some things get reported wrong. But man, it's a burden that I think as an American right now, you cannot help but be burdened by that.
Yeah. And I think as, like you said, as Christ followers too, we have to take a step back sometimes and say, even the people that we don't love, or even the people that are evil, they were created by the same God who created us. And even though that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of us, it is true. And that's something that I think we have to kind of navigate. And like you said, do anything that we can to love everybody. And to really show them Jesus, even if it's not, hey, here's these Bible verses, but it's just being there for them and being the hands and feet of Jesus. Yeah. So another situation that's going to be very different by the time this episode airs is the Hurricane Ida. Yeah. When I read yesterday, there was 4 dead, but it's still about 1 million people without power, and just horrible, horrible things. So how can God be seen in a situation like that?
I heard power could be a month for some people, and there's going to be a lot more dead than we know now. I heard a horrible story last night of a man that was with his wife, and alligator came up out of the water and grabbed him, and she went to get help, and when she came back, he was gone. Jeez. I mean, it's just so sad to think about that kind of thing. And how do we help? I mean, I remember, I don't know I think it was 3 years ago when the hurricane came through Houston. I forget the name, which hurricane that was, but it came through Houston. I don't know if you remember that, but Houston was wiped out. I mean, it was really bad. And we, as a church, responded. And I was so amazed with our people. What we decided to do was that week to give our entire offering to Houston to help. And we worked through an organization that was on the ground, providing food, made sure it was legit, providing food, providing clothing for people. But I remember in 1 week, we gave like $28,000 as a church to that. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, that we can do is support organizations like Samaritan's Purse and others that are there on the ground. I know some churches will go from Ohio, send a group of people down to Louisiana and other areas to be there on the ground working with Red Cross and others. So, I think sometimes Christians we're praying for people as a kind of a cop out. And I think it's important that we actually are the hands and feet of Jesus and actually do what we can, whether it's monetarily or with meeting physical needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Different situation. Maybe you haven't heard about this one as much, but there is a social media platform called OnlyFans. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
And also, if there's any parents listening and you hear your students or kids talking about OnlyFans, red flag. Okay, so
Okay.
it's pretty recent, last couple of years, but essentially what it is you'll make a profile on OnlyFans.
Okay.
And if you are somebody who is like a content creator, you are going to post inappropriate pictures of yourself, and then people can subscribe and pay money to your channel, and essentially you will be making money off of naked pictures of yourself. Okay, to say it straightforward. So, and what's happening with this situation is a week and a half ago, OnlyFans came out and said, the way that this platform is being used, we've decided is unhealthy, and it doesn't really benefit anything. And so from now on, we are banning all types of sexual content on OnlyFans. And then the response from the rest of the world was that, well, then there's no point in OnlyFans. So they changed their statement, and now they are going back to doing what they've always done. It's a really, really sad situation because the majority of the people who use OnlyFans are, 16 to 20. Yeah, exactly.
Underage.
And so it's sad, and it's sad to watch that a platform like that has so many dedicated people.
What was the original intent?
I don't fully know. I think
that's
that
what
was
I'm trying to understand.
Was just like, you can subscribe to somebody's page to see whatever exclusive content they put out. I think that was the idea.
So whatever
even celebrities, if I had a celebrity that I really liked, I'd pay this amount per month.
Even could be on there, but
some of them
do.
Probably not like that.
It's not really a lot of celebrities.
But I think that's how it started. And then it developed into, well, I could use this to put inappropriate pictures of myself out there, and people will pay me for them. And people make a lot of money off of it. So how can God be seen in a situation like that, where it started to head towards a direction of the company saying this is wrong, and then the world pushing it back over the line towards, let's just leave it the way it is? How does that strike you?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad for one, obviously, that there's something like that, but there's always going to be a new thing like that. Like, we've learned that now, that once one thing goes away, something else pops up. So here's just the latest and the worst. And so, obviously what you said, parents need to be aware of that. But, the thing, when you bring it back to what would God say, there's always going to be temptations out there. They've just gotten more readily accessible to us. And it's sad. I mean, when I was a kid, to be able to see anything like that, you would have to go buy a magazine or something.
Right.
And now, I mean, our kids are exposed to it so much, and they're desensitized to it. Yeah. But that being said, I think it goes back to our lust. When you think about the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life, thinking I can do this, it's not going to hurt me. And all those things are just destructive in our lives. And it's one of those things that's sad, because the people that are putting those pictures out there don't have enough self-worth to think that they don't understand how much they're worth to God, and they do something like that. And it's easy for kids to get caught up in that, young people to get caught up in that, anybody. And it's just sad that there's people that create this type of platform for that to happen. And
this obviously hits a little bit closer to home for me, because it is a student pretty much driven thing. But I would love to do an entire episode on, we studied something in college called the disappearance of childhood. And because of technology, students and kids are being forced to grow up way faster than they used to be, because the access that they have at the tip of their thumbs all the time to anything they want, and parents' lack of knowledge of those things. It's really, really dangerous, and in some cases detrimental. So I'd love to talk about that more at some point, because it would be really, really good. But it's a really sad situation. So last thing that I have on my little list here is COVID, of course. Cases and restrictions and all of those things are on the rise again. As we know. And so what do we do? How has God seen in that,
the Delta variant, all that stuff that's happening? And I think, we're watching the trends like everybody else, and we see the numbers going up, but also it seems like in some areas it's already kind of gone back down a little bit. And riding the waves of it. What do we do? I mean, I think we care for other people, obviously. I mean, I had a close pastor friend of mine that was just a few years older than me pass away from COVID just last week, and 3 weeks before he was perfectly healthy. So anybody that doesn't take it seriously, it's a serious thing, and I hate to see that. But I think we continue to. I think we got to live our lives, and you have to make your decision. I have to make my decision about vaccines. I think that's a personal decision. I mean, there's a lot of data out there to support what you want. You can twist data. Everybody can twist it. But I look at. I have a daughter that as a nurse, and I look at some of the statistics in the hospital and all that. But that's your choice. But I believe as a church, we need to continue to move forward. We went through our period of time where we're shut down, where we were all online, but we're back. But we have to continue to respect people and other people's decisions. But I think it's almost like that point where you have to keep going and trust God and do what you can with what you know and move forward, because life can't just be an idol like it was.
Right.
That was like a lost year, didn't we? I mean, it feels like that.
And social media is not your personal diary. Is that correct? Like, you don't just write everything you want on there. Is that true?
Well, for me, it's not. I tell you, some people think that's what it's supposed to be for. I mean, if you're my friend on Facebook or follow me on Instagram, I don't do a lot. Mostly I post pictures of my family or something about like what we have going on at the church.
Right.
Beyond that, it's not my place to do opinions, because all it does is divide people.
Right.
And I love people that are anti-vax. I love people that are pro-vax. I love people that are anti-mask, that are pro-mask. I have friends in all those categories, and I don't think we have to hate each other.
And so does God.
No way. Are you
It's
serious?
crazy.
I don't know. I know that. I agree with you on that. But I just think when people want to make it a divisive issue, that's not what God wants at all.
Yeah,
God does not want us to do that.
Yep.
So,
all right. Well, I think I'm ready to land this plane for today. How about you?
I mean, this has been
feel
awesome.
good.
Yeah. Yep.
For those listening, this is kind of our start. We're just getting started here.
Yeah.
But I think kind of the conclusions that we arrived at today is, even with all the things happening in our world, and we could have named a big list more.
Sure.
In all things, God is good, and He can use all things.
Right.
That's the big part of this conversation. Is even if you are somebody who maybe is struggling with hate or with gossip or with division or with whatever it may be, God can still use that. He can still use you. He can still redeem that. And in all things, God works. And I think that's a really, really good place to start this podcast.
That is. I can't wait till the next one. Again, like Mitch said earlier, if you have ideas, questions, things you'd like us to discuss, we would love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have a lineup of things that we have planned, but we want to actually talk about things that you care about. So please let us know. Yep.
If we get, feedback, ideas, questions, like, we will blow up an episode, completely change it, rewrite it, just to work those things into our conversation.
But it's not, like, I don't know if we said this earlier, but the intent is not to be a Bible study. We have that on Sunday morning with sermons. We have small groups where people do Bible study, but this is just to talk about life and real life things and bring the Bible and God into that. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
This has been good.
Yep.
And like I said, we're just getting started with where we're going to go in this first season. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for
I hope
listening.
you enjoyed it. I hope that it changed your life, made you think a little bit. But man, I can't wait for next week. So until next time, this is the In All Things podcast. We out. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the In All Things podcast. I have a challenge for you. I would like you to think of somebody right now who maybe could use the conversation that we just had and share it with them. Seriously, share it with them right now. Hey, if you have any questions, feedback, or topic ideas, please send them to podcast@sycamorecreek.org, and make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sycamore Creek Church to find out what's going on in our world. If this conversation helped you at all, make sure you share it, leave a review, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on a single episode. Hey, we love you. God loves you, and we'll see you next week on the In All Things podcast.